I've talked about this in the past. What do you want to do for dinner? I don't know. What do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? And I'm like, dude, make the reservation. Tell her the reservation Friday night, 7:00. This is the attire. It's not jeans, but we don't have to dress up, and and it's pick out a bottle of wine. It's a BYOB, and make the plans. And I'll pick you up. I'll pick you up at 6:30, rather than this ping pong. What do you want to do? What do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? And do you have decisiveness in a man? Is that important?
Absolutely. That is extremely important. That scenario you gave was perfect. As a woman, I want a man to plan what we're going to do, where we're going to go. I mean, obviously, if it's something I'm going to hate, if they know me, they would know not to do that. But I like that. It makes me feel taken care of. It makes me feel protected. It makes me feel valued. And women like to feel valued. But for me to have to say, oh, this is where I want to go. What do you think? Oh, I don't care. I don't care. Oh, when I know they really don't like that place, it can lead to an argument. It's happened. It's happened.
Yeah.
There is something so great about a man who can take charge. That doesn't mean be a bully. That means, and I think a lot of women don't understand that. They think that a man that takes charge is taking something away from the woman, and they're really not. They're giving them something. They're not taking it away. But I'm surprised at the women, not only young women, women my age and older, that feel that, oh, no, that they kind of want to be the one to say what they're going to do, where they're going to go, because everything that whether it be their husband, their boyfriend, whatever, if they pick something out, they always have a complaint. And therefore, what's going to happen? That man's going to stop. And then the relationship will start to, come apart. And of course, the woman will blame the man and say, well, he doesn't do anything. I have to make all the plans. Well, no matter what they picked to begin with before, they weren't happy with it. So, and I'm not picking on women by any means, but I've seen this. I've seen this kind of thing happen over and over again in people I knew, and even in the past in my own life. So, it's true.
What are your thoughts about clear defined roles and doing what your strength is?
Okay, I'll start with clear defined roles. I know several couples. One in particular comes to mind, and obviously I won't mention names. They know who they are. They're a couple years younger than me. And they have had clear defined roles from the start of their marriage. He would go out, he made a living. He brought, took care financially, took care of the cars, obviously the lawn, all the same type of thing. She had, quote, dinner on the table, and she cleaned, she did the laundry, she took care of the kids, ran all the errands. He was and still is a phenomenal provider. They were both happy in their marriage. It was a win-win situation for both of them. Now, she never had to struggle. He upheld his end of the bargain. He's a very dynamic man, and he's a huge success entrepreneurially, and she was a wonderful mother and wife, and they are still happily married together, and they have built a very, very nice life together. They have adult children, none of whom got in any kind of trouble. They're all successful, happy adult children with families of their own. So I think they were on target. I think they were beyond their years in wisdom, and that the fact that they both agreed to it, I think was great, because it's going back 30 some years when they got married. I do also like what you said about playing to your strengths. I know another couple. Now they're a little bit older than me, and they do not have what you and I would call maybe traditional roles, but they have roles that work for them. The woman in this couple is highly, highly educated. She's a college professor, and the husband has a good job, but nothing on the line of hers. He's a good cook. He cooks, same thing. She cleans. She hates cooking. She likes to eat, but she hates cooking. And they also have a very successful marriage, and they've been married for many years. So I think the main thing is people need to have that conversation before they get married. Whatever their roles are going to be. I think that's the big thing. Personally, I'm more of a traditional person. I like the first example that we talked about and that I gave. That would have worked the best for me. But I think as long as people talk about it and they're both in agreement, it can work. It's when they're not in agreement and it's something that wasn't discussed, that was just kind of left to the whim. We'll figure it out as we go. Doesn't work.
Yeah. You can't wing it when it comes to that.
No, because then that bleeds over to how you're going to raise children too. Are you going to have children? How are you going to raise them? Are they going to go to public school? Are they going to go to Catholic school, private school? Whatever. Values. You find out you're with someone that you're not equally yoked, so to speak. And then it's kind of a little bit late, but it happens. So
Yeah.
I think it's important to get that out of the way before you move forward.
Date long, marry slow, and divorce fast. And
Yes.
some people have said to me, they've accused me of being pro-divorce, and I'm not pro-divorce. I'm pro-divorce fast. If you already decided to get divorced, don't drag it out, because so many people end up having, for lack of a better term, relationship PTSD because of the divorce process. Divorce really brings the worst out of everybody. That's what I have discovered personally, and also in my coaching. I just see that divorce brings the worst. And of course, I've been accused, like I said, of being pro-divorce. I'm not pro-divorce at all. I am, if you already decided to get divorced, divorce fast. Make it as quick as possible. Don't let the attorneys be the winners in the situation. But the middle one, well, date long, marry slow. That's getting to know somebody.
Absolutely.
So there's no surprises.
Exactly. You really shouldn't. Nobody should marry someone they met in a few months ago. That is a disaster waiting to happen. That's just a bad idea. So I do agree with that. You have to get to know them. You have to get to know their families. And granted, you can pick your friends, but not your relatives. But I still think that the parties involved need to come to terms with, can I accept it? Can I accept what I will be married into? I think there's ways to work around it, certainly, or come up with a plan or strategy if there is a difficult relative so that you can make it work. So there's so much more that goes into it that, I certainly didn't realize. I think a lot of people don't realize. But, the gift of wisdom as we get older, right?
Well, are you saying that you would do things differently now than you did 35, 40 years ago?
Completely differently. Completely. I can't even begin to tell. I would just completely, total opposite of what I did. So, yeah.
Is that because of age, or what? What do you think that's from?
Why I feel that way? Well, I of age, I can see hindsight, it's always 2020. I see the mistakes I made. Really look for someone that you share similar values with. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to come from the same socioeconomic bracket. I don't mean anything like that, but similar values. That's really important. And that's another thing I didn't realize when I was young.
Yeah.
And
In what way? In what way? Describe similar values.
Values. How are we going to raise our children? Okay. What is one going to be the disciplinarian? What are their thoughts individually on discipline, or on what will be acceptable and what will not be acceptable? Is it anything goes? The kids can just come and go, and it can be other kids coming in and out all day. They have no curfew. They have no responsibility. We don't care about their grades. Or are there certain expectations? That's a big thing. And then again, of course, like I say, the roles in the marriage between the husband and the wife, what their individual roles are. Or from that, big things like that, on to things like some people don't like to go on vacation. Some people don't like to do anything. They are comfortable coming home, sitting in front of the TV, and that's okay. But if the other person isn't, and they like to hike or they want to explore new places, and it's not going to work either, because eventually it's going to lead to frustration and bitterness on one party or both parties, the part of both parties. So all those things, it doesn't, when I say values, I don't mean that someone's wrong and someone's immoral. It just means everyone's values are slightly different. You have to find people someone that you align with. But nobody tells things. Nobody tells you these things. There's no manual. Nobody told me that. I just thought, well, you get married and that's it. What's the big deal? Oh, a lot.
Yeah.
So I think younger people need some sort of guidance because they don't know these things.
I'm a firm believer that men should be teaching the younger men. Women should be teaching the younger women. I really, and I abide by that, in the sense that in my coaching, I work only with men, and I refer out. If a woman says, how do I sign up for your coaching? I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't coach ladies, but what are you dealing with? Let me know. And I have several people that I work with that I can refer you to. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they're happy about that. Sometimes they're not. And if they're not happy about that, then that shows me ulterior motives. Then it's more about they just want to spend time with me. And I'm like, well, that's not something that I do or would think is appropriate with a younger woman, because I truly believe that men should be teaching men, women should be teaching women. And it's a big field. I don't think that men can teach women. I know a lot of times women think that they can teach men. I don't know. What are your thoughts about that? Do you agree with me, or do you have a different opinion about men teaching men, women teaching women?
All in all, I as far as like mentoring, I completely agree. Men should mentor young men, older women should mentor younger women. However, as far as like just some general advice, I think I, as a woman, could give men advice from a woman's perspective, but that's not the same thing as like men. It's different. And the same thing, I think a man can do that with women. The advice, or like, oh my gosh, someone tell me how a man thinks, or someone tell me how a woman thinks. That's something we can do with the opposite sex, I think. But as far as a mentoring, yeah, most definitely, especially for younger men and younger women, you're not going to get that from the opposite. Like just how to learn to yourself. That's what I'm talking about. Things you should be looking out for, things you should be working on within yourself, your value system. You're not going to get that. Like a young woman isn't going to get that from a man, and a young man isn't going to get that from like an older woman.
Right.
So
there are people who say that we are in a post-marriage era right now, and that no man should be getting married. I know in the men's development arena, there are a lot of men that say marriage is out of the question.
I know men like that.
Yeah. And then there are people who have just the opposite feeling. I think it's different at different stages in life. Different stages in life. I mean, I think when people get married at 25, it's different than getting married at 45, or different than getting married at 60.
Absolutely.
And it's about companionship.
Right. I agree. Now, that said, in a perfect world, I would love to get married again. However, I find many men who feel that, I'll never get married again, because just like you said, they're past the point of having babies. You know, they don't need to, their careers have been built, they're winding down. Many of them have gone through a really rough divorce, and they're a little nervous. You know, they don't want that to happen again. I've heard that said, not towards me, but in general, I don't want that to happen again. Some are truly looking for companionship, which is great. Some are, looking for the same thing, a 25-year-old who's set loose in the world, they're it's like their last hurrah, if you know what I
Yeah.
mean.
Yeah.
I don't really like that, but it is what it is, because I think at the age when you get into like 55 to maybe early 60s, it's like, all right, still fit, still healthy, still good, I'm going to go out and date as many women as I can. Sadly, rather than focus on finding someone who would be a good companion. That's one of the most frustrating things that I see with men. Having nothing even to do with, getting married. And then there are a few that's what they're looking for. They want to get married. They're almost like interviewing someone. Kind of like the opposite end of the spectrum.
Right. Yeah, I know when it comes to, the reasons why two people would be together at our age, obviously it's not like the reason is to start a family and homestead together and all this kind of stuff. It's more about companionship. It's about building something with what you have left in life. It's not about salvaging the last few years that you have. Like I'm not ready to put in the grave my physical and sexual needs. I still feel like that's going to be part of my life. Whereas I know a lot of people who, that for them, it's a thing of the past.
Yes.
And they only have memories about it. It's something I look forward to it. I don't look back on it.
Exactly. Yes. And you know what? You're right. That is a big thing. I've had men that I don't know even ask me, oh, are you still interested in intimacy? And I think, whoa, apparently, when you get to this age, there are a lot of women who aren't. I wouldn't know. And I presume it's the other way around. I don't know. I don't go around asking. So yes, you're right. Like I may be 61, but inside I feel 30. Yeah. And I feel like I have a lot of energy and exuberance. And I literally wake up ready to go for the day. I mean, unless I'm sick, obviously. And sure. I want to take advantage of that. I don't want to sit in a rocking chair. Although I do have one in my living room, but it's for right before bed.
Right.
I don't want to just sit wasting away in front of the TV. I want to get out and do things. And I want to live like I'm 30 or 35 as far as like activity level. So, and that's another, so that gets back to also the compatibility too.
Yeah, that is true. I think, again, date long, marry slow, but let's stick with the date long thing. I think when you date long, you find out if a person is adventurous or if they just want to settle in a recliner and watch Netflix all the time.
Exactly.
Or you see how much alcohol that they use.
Right.
Or if they are eating unhealthy, if they're, eating a half a bag of Hershey's Kisses every day or something like that. I think you only find that stuff out because I've been known to say that people can be on their best behavior for a few months all the way up to a few years.
I would agree with that. Yes, I would agree with that.
I think the date long thing, like getting to know one another and seeing people's reactions in a wide variety of circumstances is interesting. Watching how someone treats pets, watching how someone treats the elderly, watching how someone treats their children or other people's children, or watching how someone treats the cocktail waitress or the wait staff, things like that.
That was going to be it. I was going to say exactly that. Plus, I have heard a little too late in life that you should see someone go through all the emotions in the time that you're with them. Whether, you have to know them long enough to see them angry, to see them sad, to see them happy, to see them silly, so that you know what you're getting. Because like you say, people can put up a facade for a long time. Yeah. And then I often wonder if this is what happens, and I've heard this from men and I've heard it from women, oh, he or she, they were great while we were dating. Once we got married, they completely changed. Maybe they did. Maybe they were putting on a good facade, or maybe the person who said they changed was also putting on a facade. It works both ways.
Maybe they had blinders on, because, I don't think we should always act on love, because love is in the beginning is basically a chemical reaction inside the body. It's a feeling.
Right.
And after a period of time, you realize love is an action, not a feeling.
Right.
And it's something that you cultivate, and it grows deeper and deeper and deeper, because you're not always going to feel in love. You're not going to always look at that person and have stars in your eyes. It's just not going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's true. And I've heard that said so many times, and I do believe that's true. However, I do feel there needs to be, for a successful relationship and for a long-term successful relationship, there needs to be a basic chemistry. If it's not there, you can be the two most compatible people on paper in the world, and it's not going to work out. You can agree on whether it's views on A, B, or C. It doesn't matter. But if you don't have some sort of basic chemistry, it's not going to work. And maybe that sounds, and I don't mean for that to sound shallow, because it's nothing to do with being shallow. We never know who we're going to have chemistry with.
Going back to resolving conflict, how people resolve conflict, how people fight, is important. Do you think that's important?
I do. I think personally, from my own experience, I think, again, this is things I think that should be talked about, because inevitably you're gonna have disagreements, you're gonna have arguments. I think you need to have some ground rules. Whatever you're fighting about, you should fight, argue, disagree, whatever. Resolve that issue, not bring up something. Well, I remember 5 years ago when we went such and such, you said this. That has nothing to do with it. I think that's where a lot of couples go wrong. They start dredging up things from the past, things that may even have nothing to do with them.
Right.
So, and I think that it sabotages the relationship, because I think people can work through arguments, disagreements, fights, whatever, if they stick to the issue and also know boundaries. I mean, you don't start calling names. If whatever you're disagreeing on, you stick to the subject at hand. You don't attack them as a person, like, well, you're a jerk because you feel that way. No, they're not. You have differences of opinion. And I think to figure out a way to resolve it, or what some people do. I know one couple that says they will just keep talking about it. And if they can't resolve it, they'll say, okay, we're just going to put this aside. We will get back to it tomorrow or in 2 days. And then they do. And eventually they work it out. So, I mean, I guess it's different for every couple. But I think the important thing is not bringing up the past and not bringing things into the argument that are totally irrelevant.
Yeah. But deal with the differences. Like, attack the problem, not the person.
It's perfect. Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm.
I've been known to tell a lot of my guy friends who and clients, have a kitchen table talk. Lights on. Don't do it on your way out of the house, or like literally sit at the dining room table, sit at the kitchen table, and you have to decide as a couple, like if you're the kind of family household that starts to retire at 8:30 at night, don't start your conflict resolution at 8 o'clock.
Right.
Because I like to think, don't talk about important, potentially difficult issues after 7 o'clock or after 6 o'clock or whatever. Timing is perfect. I like kitchen table talks, dining room table talks, versus like where you're facing each other and looking at each other, rather than one person washing the dishes and the other person is in the other room and you're yelling back and forth and that kind of thing. I think that's important, to be able to have ground rules.
Absolutely. And I like the idea what you said about sitting there at the table. I guess in my mind, I think with a cup of tea or a cup of coffee and just talking like mature adults. And right, really giving each other the attention and the focus. And I personally can't see too many issues that can't be resolved like that. But I think when you things in, it just drives the people farther and farther away.
How can, well, I've heard it said, like, never let the sun go down on your anger. Just like make sure that you deal with these things before you go to bed, and still just have that bedtime routine. If you're a married couple, still kiss goodnight, still
Tell them you love them.
Exactly. You don't have to have back to back in bed snarling at each other. Just literally one person can say, okay, time out. Let's, like you said, let's continue this tomorrow or at another time, or that type of thing, as opposed to just sniping at each other without resolution and making a one evening conflict resolution time a 2 week long just bitching and sniping at one another.
And maybe, just maybe, sleeping on it, it won't look it won't look to be as big and as alarming of a problem in the morning. Things might look different. You know how you wake up with fresh eyes, and that's possibility too. Or at the very least, you've had a good night's sleep, calm, refreshed. I think that has something to do with it too. But it's true. I agree. Don't fight, whatever, conflict resolution right before bed. It's just not, you're tired, you're run down. Your any kind of self-control that we have, I'm sure, is kind of like is getting tired and wearing thin. That's not good. So that's just inviting trouble. Plus, I think you want to keep your emotions kind of on even keel before you go to sleep, so that you can sleep, and that's important to be.
I know with 12-step programs, they talk about, like for instance, Alcoholics Anonymous, they talk about your triggers, the things that will make you want to open up a bottle of vodka or open up a beer, and and I think there's an acronym, HALT, and it's hungry, angry, lonely, tired. If you are one of those things, there's a good chance that you're going to drink. You're hungry, angry, lonely, tired. And I think that is applicable in relationships. In other words, like if I'm hungry and kind of like low blood sugar, and I know my reactions are not gonna be normal and even keeled. If I'm angry, if I'm pissed off because of something that happened at work, I am certainly not going to, I want to leave that at work. Leave it at the front door, in the back door, literally. Lonely, feeling isolated, or feeling tired. That's why I say have a cutoff time. Do not try to resolve conflict at 9:00 at night.
Right.
Not a good thing.
Right. Agree. Yeah, completely. Yes. That's true. That's very true. And I think, set aside time, make an appointment to, I don't want to say argue, but to conflict resolution. Make an appointment for a meeting.
Make an appointment. How interesting. Someone calls and says, hey, let's go play racquetball. Now I have a conflict appointment. I have a meeting with my wife. It sounds weird, but I think there's some wisdom to that. Is setting, plus that also tells the other person that they're important, or that the relationship is worth working on. And I think you also are telling yourself that this relationship is worth saving.
Yes, exactly. I think so too.
We are a priority.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Because we give other things priority. We make appointments to do other things. We make appointments to go out on dates. We make appointments to see our friends. All those things are important. We set aside time to write bills, whatever the case may be. We set aside time. But if we don't set aside time to have difficult conversations, and I think that maybe one of the reasons people don't want to do that is because that word, it is difficult. We know, let's say, okay, 6:30 Tuesday evening, we're going to have a conversation about this excessive spending or whatever the problem is. It's difficult, and people, maybe they'll dread it all day, but I think if they get in the habit of doing that every time there is an issue that needs to be discussed, it won't seem so like frightening. It won't seem like maybe one person is afraid they're going to get reprimanded. And it shouldn't be about that. It shouldn't be about just, blame throwing. It should be about, okay, how do we get to this point, whatever the situation is? We disagree on where to send the kids to school. Okay, let's talk about this. What are the pros? What are the cons? And what can we do to come together? Or whatever the situation may be, without using that appointment as an attack session.
Men have joked around about this when, the woman says, we need to have a talk.
Yes.
I joke around and I say, what that really means, there's the humor that says, what she said and then what she really means.
Mm-hmm.
What she said was, we need to have a talk. What she really means is, I'm going to talk, you're going to listen.
Yes.
And a lot of guys kind of submit to that. And I think what that is the thing that we talked about, the parent, adult, child. Nobody wants to feel like that. Nobody wants to feel like they're being lectured at by a teacher at school or a parent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Our mate, our partner, our long-term relationship, whatever you want to call it, spouse, nobody wants to feel like that person is treating us like a child.
Right. Plus, and I'll use a woman as an example, when a woman says, we need to talk, what does it mean? You're in trouble. You've done something wrong.
Right.
And maybe it probably goes that way too, the opposite. Like if someone said to me, we need to talk, I think, what did I think, oh my God, what did I do?
Right. So, what did I do? Right.
Did I?
So you're defensive right from the get.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like I think people need and this is just human nature. I think people need some sort of a sense that when someone says, can we talk, or let's set aside time to talk, like everything's fine or whatever, but let's just get some things squared away about such and such an issue, just so they know that, okay, the sky isn't falling.
Do men have a peak and do women have a peak? When do men peak? When do women peak? There was a time, I don't know, about 5 years ago, when I said something like, women don't hit their peak until they're 50. And of course I got ridiculed about that. And then I actually came back harder and said, no, I was wrong. Make that 60. And people flipped out. And I just did it because I was just kind of trolling and trying to create some reactions. That's what I was trying to do. I've heard some people say, men age like wine, women age like milk. And and you sit there, it's like, ouch,
yeah,
so to speak. But here's the thing. Why would I want to be with sour milk?
I think as a woman, I can speak for women. I don't know really when men peak, but as a woman, yeah, I would say 50 at the youngest, more like closer to 60 or 60, because I know for myself, when you get to that age, you're comfortable in your skin, you're comfortable with who you are, you're not constantly seeking approval from other people, or at least I would hope not. Not that you want to do things that are necessarily unconventional and you want to always be stirring up the pot. I don't mean that, but you are living life on your terms, and you're not at the mercy of everyone's approval. You know what you want, and that's subject to change with what you want. can change with it. That's our prerogative as men and women, I think. But at least at that time in your life, you know what you want and you're firm in your convictions. And I think you have to be a certain age to get to that point. When you're 25, 30, 35, I think you're just too young. Now let's be, and I'm thinking is it the same for men, would you say?
I think so. I mean, my opinion is youth is a state of mind, because I know I'm 62, you're 61.
Mhm.
We're from the same generation. But you know men and I know women that are far older in their brain than they are biologically. And like old fuddy-duddies. I mean, I
Oh,
know, like, you just have to go to a high school reunion and you go, oh my Lord, do I look like that?
yeah.
You
To constantly be like kind of aware and connected and intellectually curious keeps people young.
Yeah, it is a state of mind. And I think how we are now is the result, is kind of like the sum total of the last 10 years. Like
Mm-hmm,
if you were pretty crappy to yourself,
mm-hmm.
nutrition wise, alcohol, lack of activity for the past 10 years, it's going to show up in your face and your body and your health and your lab work, that kind of stuff. And I know I had a wake up call with lab work, and that really got me, it like woke me up. And I said, I am not going out this way. That ain't going to happen. So I literally had to turn stuff around. It was either do that or just start start the decline, start becoming an old man. And I'm like, I'll be damned if I'm an old man. That ain't
Mm-hmm,
going to happen. That will
mm-hmm,
not happen.
mm-hmm. No,
Do
I
women
understand.
do women think the same way?
Yes, they do. They do. And I know I personally feel like I'll hear women say, oh, well, I've gained 20 or 30 pounds or whatever. Well, it's just what happens at this age. It doesn't have to. Um, we can make the changes necessary to be our best self. We're not going to, obviously we're not going to look like what we did at 25, but we can make changes so that we are our best selves, whether we're 50, 55, 60, 65 on up. So yes, a lot of it is in our hands. Obviously not everything, but a lot of it.
Yeah.
And I know I won't take it. I won't, just lie down and put up my paws and say, well, that's it. This is what it's going to be. I might as well just, sit in my rocker and, eat cookies all day. Why not? No, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
And I find with it, when I do really have that mindset and I put it into practice, I mean, I wake up with almost probably pretty darn close to as much energy as I had in my 30s. Not to say there aren't some days where I feel a little bit, my job is helping people maintain their flexibility. And I'm pretty flexible, but not like I was. When I think of the exercises I could do on my apparatus 20 years ago versus now, I mean, I'm older, but it's not tremendously different. And I will do everything I can to not let it be tremendously different for as long as I can. So we
Yeah.
become responsible.
Yeah. Well, you have a very nice figure. I mean, you have the figure of a young woman. I mean, literally of someone half your age. Although I have seen 30-year-old women that are not in shape, so maybe age has nothing to do with it. You're in great shape for any age,
Thank you.
not just a young woman, but just
Right.
any age. You're in good shape for any age. Does being in a physical fitness industry motivate you to stay in shape more?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Without a doubt. Because I have had people say to me, now not lately, but I've had throughout the course of, the last 20 plus years, people say, well, if you didn't look the way you did, I wouldn't come in, because how would that motivate me? And at first I really didn't know how to take it. And I thought, well, no, you know what? That makes sense. That makes sense.
Very interesting.
Yes. Because when people come in now, I'm getting older. Many of my clients are getting older. So I don't think they feel that way as much anymore, but yet they will say to me, well, what do you, besides this, what do you do? What do you eat? How much sleep do you get? How do you stay always, what do you do? What do you do to stay healthy in addition to, Pilates? So I kind of like that. It makes me feel good. And I certainly don't dispense advice. I know what's right for me and what works for me. Say to me, oh, how do I get rid of, it's just this on my belly. How do I get that's diet. That is diet. That is diet. The visceral fat, that's diet. I can't tell them what to eat. I can give them pointers on maybe what not to eat, but I can't tell them what's right to eat. But I can give them some pointers. What I have found works for me. And I have no problem doing that. I'm not dispensing a diet plan to them. But yeah, it is important. It makes it doubly important that I maintain some sort of level of fitness and just good health in general because of what I do.
Yeah. I remember I was 55 and there was a guy that I knew only online, and he was one of my followers, but on his Instagram, he was pretty jacked at 55 years old. And I remember private messaging him and I'm like, dude, how do you do it? Like, wow. Like, I can't believe you're 55. Like, how do I get there? And he said to me two things. He said, abs begin in the kitchen. I'm like, shit.
Yes, they do.
And he said, you can't out train a bad diet.
I couldn't have said it better myself. That is exactly right. You can't do enough cardio to offset a bad diet. That is very true. Yeah. Especially, like I said, especially with abs. Especially, for me, I found out it's protein, good quality protein.
Yeah. Yeah. I love my pastries and donuts and pizza and pasta. I love all that stuff. I do, but I've had to, like even beer. I enjoy a good hoppy beer that's been very trendy for the past 10 years or so. But having a bottle of beer is like eating a loaf of bread. Carbs wise, and I'm thinking so now I might have one, maybe 1.5 a year, but I just can't sit there and drink beer all night. Can't do it.
I like beer on occasion, but I love wine, and I love to have a glass of wine with dinner. And that's one thing
Same here.
that I allow myself.
Yes.
Love dark chocolate, and now I've kind of cut back very recently because, to some extent, dark chocolate is fine, but I was hitting the dark chocolate a little too much. So I know that. All right, that's enough. I'm going to put it aside. And the bad thing is I can even put it in the freezer and I can eat it frozen. So it doesn't, I know where it is.
Right.
So matter of, say, willpower. That's not a good word. Discipline, not really a good word either. Discipline, more like a plan. Like if I make a plan, I want to stick with it. And if I go off course, I learn not to beat myself up. I can just get right back on course. It doesn't mean I have to wait. Well, I'll wait till next week. No, I can tomorrow morning. I'm back on. So it's about not making up. We all get off course, but it's about not making up a lot of excuses. And I think that works in not only, fit nutrition and diet, but in many areas of our lives.
This has been a great talk. You want to do it again sometime?
I sure do. I would love to. Let me know when. I would love to do this again.
Tell the audience what you do for a living, and we'll wrap it up.
I'm a Pilates instructor. I have a private studio and I do private sessions on the Pilates apparatus. And I have recently added a new service. I am a certified assisted stretching and flexibility coach. So I'm offering 30-minute simply stretching, assisted stretching and flexibility sessions, which is not something I teach how to do stretches, self stretches at home, but what I specifically do, you can't do on yourself. So that's just kind of an add-on to Pilates. Pilates is something in and of itself, and this is just something additional. That's what I do.
That's
I
great.
love it. I've been doing it for over 20 years, and I absolutely love it.
Excellent. And I will say, if there's anyone who's interested in that type of thing, get a hold of me, and I'll put you in touch with Jerry, and then I'll just hand it over to you guys. And you are in the Philadelphia, the far western suburbs of Philadelphia.
Correct. Yes. Outside of Reading.
Okay, excellent. Well, Jerry, thank you so much for a great chat. And I felt like it was I felt like the timing is right, because I think younger people, the demographic that follows me, needs to see two adults interact.
I agree.
In a healthy way, and talk about things and have differences and agreements, and not have to make points all the time.
Right. And allow each other and allow the other person their own ideas and respect the ideas of the other person. And I think that builds healthy relationships too.
Have a good rest of your night.
Thanks for having me on. I'll talk to you real soon.